The MVP race is heating up right now, and I've seen a lot of different takes on who should win MVP and what the MVP race should look like, and I have some very strong opinions about this year's MVP race. So I wanted to take some time out of your guys' day to go ahead and briefly have a small little rant regarding the MVP race. Now, I did want to mention this video is being recorded and more than likely uploaded on Friday, December 1st. So if you're watching this on like December 20th, then the people I talk about on this list don't deserve to be on this list. Don't hate on me, this video was recorded on December 1st. Now, I have 8 different candidates for the MVP race, and I'm going to start off with the person who I think deserves it the least, and at the very end will be the person who I think deserves it the most. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about these MVP candidates. Now, the number 8 player who I'm going to talk about is going to be Josh Allen. Let's get this out of the way about Josh Allen. He is having a really good season. On the year, he has 3,214 yards, 24 touchdowns, but 13 interceptions. And there's a number of reasons why I actually think he doesn't deserve to be in the top 5 or really considered to be a serious contender for this award. Number 1, and probably the most notable thing that he kind of is bad at right now, is the interceptions. Josh Allen has thrown an interception in all of but 2 games. And at times, those interceptions have lost them games. Look back at the Jets game or his game against the Broncos. He is the reason why he's lost those games. And while no quarterback is perfect, at the end of the day, throwing an interception in 8 straight games is just, in my opinion, kind of inexcusable. Not to mention, the Buffalo Bills aren't winning a whole lot of games this year. Had the Buffalo Bills been something like 8-3, I do think he'd be a little bit higher, but because they're 6-6, I can't put them that high. Also, side note on Josh Allen, I think it's absolutely hysterical the change in the minds of the national media, because it felt like for like a week straight, everyone was hating on Josh Allen and calling him overrated and not a top 5 quarterback, to where now I'm seeing him being brought up in MVP discussions. Like, I thought the whole narrative around him being a turnover machine was just kind of silly in the first place, but now people are calling him an MVP. I don't know about that one. At the number 7, I have Christian McCaffrey. And the biggest reason why he's this low, it's a quarterback award, and I think honestly, rightfully so. Like, look at Christian McCaffrey. He's having a really good season this year. He has 193 carries for 939 yards, 11 rushing touchdowns to go along with 48 receptions for 389 yards and an additional 5 passing touchdowns. Like, yeah, the dude has been ridiculously good this year. But this is essentially the same 49ers team, just plus Brock Purdy and out with Jimmy Garoppolo, that just made a Super Bowl just a few years ago. And in my opinion, you can't call somebody the MVP if that team was really good without you. Like, truth be told, I don't really know if this team would be Super Bowl contenders without McCaffrey, but I do think they'd be right up there with the best of the best in the NFC. McCaffrey just kind of adds a nice little element to this team, but I don't think he should win the MVP. Again, he's having a statistically pretty solid season, but I don't think he's been better than some other players on this list. I would even say somewhat that people have been kind of overrating his season, not overrating the player, but overrating his season this year. At the end of the day, he only has 4 games with over 100 rushing yards and only 3 games over 50 receiving yards. I know his touchdowns have been crazy, and I know that he has been super effective in spots, but at the end of the day, I think his season might be a little bit overrated if you're putting him in the top 3 MVP discussion right now. At the number 6 spot, I have Tyreek Hill, and honestly, a lot of the reasons what I just said about McCaffrey kind of follow Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill statistically has an incredible season. He has 120 targets for 88 receptions and 1,300 passing yards with 10 touchdowns. And if he can keep this pace up, it's very likely that he'll get over 1,900 receiving yards this season. But I want to emphasize, this is an MVP award that typically goes to quarterbacks. And I just don't know if a receiver, especially a Tyreek Hill, can win this award. Has he been the best player offensively? You could argue that, I wouldn't deny that, but at the end of the day, does he bring enough value to beat out a quarterback for this award? I just don't know if he does. Do the Miami Dolphins have a chance to make the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill? Probably not. I think Tyreek Hill gives him that extra boost to become a Super Bowl contender, and I think that's why he's brought up in the conversation. But I think it's more than likely that either Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill will win the Offensive Player of the Year award rather than the MVP. Next up at number 5, I have Tua Tagovailoa, another Miami Dolphins on this list. There's a couple reasons why I don't think Tua should be deserving of this award too much. For starters, let's get this out of the way. He's having a very good season. He has 3,177 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. But I think when you compare his stats to a lot of other players on this list, I don't think he matches up quite as well statistically and just kind of the eye test. For starters, I think most people don't realize that he's thrown quite a number of interceptions. He's thrown an interception in all but 3 games this year, whereas there have been other quarterbacks on this list who haven't quite done that. And another big knock on him is that he doesn't perform well against really good teams. Against the Buffalo Bills, where they lost with a score of 48-20, he had 282 passing yards for 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Against the Philadelphia Eagles, where they lost 31-17, he had 216 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And then against the Kansas City Chiefs, where they lost with a score of 21-14, he had 193 yards for only 1 touchdown and 0 interceptions. In all of those games, he did not have a good quarterback rating, and I do think a good MVP level quarterback plays consistent the entire season, even against really good teams. So if the Dolphins can avenge some of their bad losses and start matching with some W's, I do think that Tua might be able to move up in the conversation. But for now, I have him this low for right now. Next up at the number 4 spot, and probably my most controversial pick thus far in this video, I have Jalen Hurts. I am fully prepared to get a lot of shit about this pick, but I don't think he's been playing quite as well as what people make him out to be. On the season, Jalen Hurts has 2,697 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, whereas rushing the football, he has 114 carries for 410 yards and 11 touchdowns. Now, if you look at the turnovers, 10 interceptions and 6 fumbles. That is a combined 16 turnovers that I don't think any quarterback that I have mentioned in this video has done, maybe outside of Josh Allen. Now, the reason why he's on this list, the team is 10-1 and he's playing some really good football, but I do believe that his season is currently getting a little bit overrated right now. Is Jalen Hurts a top 5, top 10 quarterback? 100% no doubt in my mind. He is the perfect fit on this roster. But here's my opinion on Jalen Hurts. If you put a Gardner Minshew with this Philadelphia Eagles team, that team is still really damn good. I'm not trying to downplay what Jalen Hurts is and who he is, but let's not deny the fact that he has a great head coach, 2 great receivers, a great running back, a great offensive line, and a decent defense. I think he elevates his team to become Super Bowl contenders because, let's be honest, if you put Gardner Minshew on this team, they're not winning the Super Bowl, but I think Jalen Hurts gives them that chance, which is why he's 4th in my MVP voting and it's why he's a top 5 quarterback. But I don't think he quite elevates his team like some of the players I'm about to mention. Again, he has 16 turnovers this year and has gotten outplayed by multiple quarterbacks this season. Against Dallas, he got outplayed by Dak. Against Kansas City, he got outplayed by Patrick Mahomes. And then against Buffalo, he got outplayed by Josh Allen. Now, granted, they won those games, and he's a great player who's on a really, really good team. I don't think he's number 1 on this list, though. I think a lot of people are overvaluing the season that he's having, and calling him the MVP right now, in my opinion, is just not the right decision. That is, unless these players who I'm about to mention start to fall off towards the back end of the season, but if things stay the same right now, he's my 4th favorite. Next up with the number 3, I have CJ Stroud. And this is kind of what I mean about elevating a bad roster to becoming a legitimate playoff contender. CJ Stroud is having an absolutely ridiculous season with 3,266 passing yards, 19 touchdowns with only 5 interceptions. And this is the same Houston Texans team that last year had the number 2 overall pick. CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans should, in my opinion, both be some of the favorites for their awards, and I think CJ Stroud should be a little bit higher than Jalen Hurts. The only knock and the only reason why I can't have him a little bit higher, they're 6-5. And you can also throw out a couple of performances where CJ Stroud did not have a very good game. Week 1 against Baltimore, not a good game. Against the Arizona Cardinals, not a good game. Against the Carolina Panthers, not a good game. You sort of get my point. He has a couple small games where you can kind of nitpick and say, hey, you didn't have a good game here or there. CJ Stroud is a phenomenal rookie quarterback, and I'm so excited for his future. I do think he should be in the discussion for the award just based off the value that he brings to his team, but should he win the award? Not quite yet, in my opinion. But let's move on to my number 2 spot, which is going to be Lamar Jackson. Now, statistically speaking, his numbers aren't godly in comparison to some of these other quarterbacks I've mentioned. At the end of the day, he only has 2,618 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 574 rushing yards with 5 touchdowns, and 6 fumbles lost. I want to emphasize something here. Statistically speaking, not as impressive as some of these other quarterbacks, but the eye test tells me this guy deserves to be in the conversation. The way that this offense just seamlessly moves the ball up and down the field and is able to put up points in bunches, in my opinion, makes him the MVP almost front runner. He doesn't turn the ball over quite as much as a guy like Jalen Hurts, and he's extremely effective with both his passing game and his rushing game. He also elevates a team that, let's be honest, doesn't have the same amount of talent as a team like Philadelphia. Baltimore is a weird team where on paper these guys aren't incredible players by no means, but they just fit the system and the culture very well. And I think that's what separates a guy like a Lamar Jackson over a Jalen Hurts right now, especially in this MVP discussion. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to elevate his team quite as much as a guy like Lamar Jackson. Go position by position between the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Baltimore Ravens are supremely out-talented, but what they do have is a very good system with a very, very good quarterback who knows how to run the system at an extremely proper rate. He also hasn't really had a single bad game this year. Sure, he has some games where he doesn't have any touchdowns and maybe some poor QBR ratings, but I don't think he's really brought his team down that much. Most of the time, it's the lack of talent around him that often will bring the team down. I think a good example of what I'm trying to get at with Lamar Jackson, where he's not having a great statistical season, but his team is performing well because of him, is that Seattle Seahawks game where they won with a score of 37-3. But on the game, he only had 187 passing yards with 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He was the reason why they won the game. Sure, the rushing game was phenomenal and it helped stat pad the game for them, but Lamar Jackson drove them down the field over and over and over again, and they consistently outclassed the Seattle Seahawks in so many ways. That, for me, is the make of an MVP quarterback, even if his stats aren't that great. But in number 1, and boy, am I going to get some shit for this, Dak Prescott. Go ahead, hit me in the comment section below. Metro, you don't know nothing. You're stupid. You're an idiot. Shut up for a second. Dak Prescott is the MVP right now. Now, I want to get this out of the way. They were kind of creating a narrative last night on Thursday Night Football that Dak Prescott has sort of had a tale of two stories. The first half of the season, prior to the San Francisco game, and then the prior to after the San Francisco game. But I don't really think that's quite the case. Dak Prescott is more of the victim of one bad game, and that was against the San Francisco 49ers. Other than that game, Dak Prescott's been fucking good. Early on in the season, it wasn't pretty offense by them, and I think the big reason why was because of their red zone offense. You look back at that Arizona Cardinals game, Dak Prescott had a decent game. Everyone likes to say that Dak Prescott lost in the game. No, they just couldn't score in the red zone, and they had the one interception that kind of screwed their game over. Sure, Dak did not play phenomenal in that game, but they were moving the ball down really well. But you look at the rest of the games, Dak Prescott has been one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And yes, even against good teams, minus the 49ers. You're going to hear me say that a lot while I talk about Dak Prescott. Take away the 49ers game, Dak Prescott has been the best quarterback in the NFL. On the year, he has 3,234 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. You do need to also add context that he has played one more game than basically everybody else, so do bear that in mind. On the season, the Dallas Cowboys have scored over 40 points 5 different times, and sure, were they going up against the most godly talented teams? No. But against the Seattle Seahawks last night, Dak Prescott played one of the best football games I've ever seen him play, and against the Philadelphia Eagles, where they lost with a score of 28-23, Dak Prescott outdueled Jalen Hurts in every single way. I think if you look at the season that Dak Prescott is having as a whole, outside of San Francisco, he has been the best quarterback basically every single week. Again, people will try to downplay his first 5 or 4 games at the start of the season. He was playing some pretty good football. It just so happened that they weren't winning at quite the clip they were doing right now. I think the reason why a lot of people don't want to give Dak Prescott the credit he deserves is because of that 49ers game and because he's the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. However, if you take off your blurry, biased vision, Dak Prescott has been playing better than whatever your MVP favorite is right now. The offense for the Dallas Cowboys has been phenomenal this year. And that stupid narrative that he was a turnover machine that you guys were trying to push last year, yeah, it's not working this year. He's playing incredible. Because he only has 6 interceptions, which is only 1 more higher than CJ Stroud and less than every single quarterback I've mentioned on this list. And yeah, that includes Jalen Hurts. I am not a Cowboys fan, but I am a huge Dak Prescott fan. The hate and the shit that he gets, in my opinion, is ridiculous. The guy has been playing at an MVP level, and I don't understand why he is not the MVP favorite on every single person's list. Because you take the star off his helmet, and let's say you replace that with a New York Jets symbol, he's number 1 by far. But again, people don't want to give him the credit because he's the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, and the fan base can be a little annoying. But I am here as an unbiased Las Vegas Raiders fan to tell you that Dak Prescott is the MVP. And you can try to shift the narrative however you want. Oh, he hasn't beaten a good team. Oh, he doesn't do good against really good teams. Not true, not the case. Because Dak played well against Philadelphia. He played amazing against the Seattle Seahawks. The only game he hasn't played good in this year, San Francisco. And let's not forget that a lot of people don't play well against San Francisco. That is one of the best teams in the league for a reason. And I'm sorry, if Dallas plays San Francisco today, I still think San Francisco wins, but I think it's a damn close game, and I think Dak Prescott performs a shit ton better. Now, before I close out this video, and I'm sorry for that rant, I get a little personal about that, I did want to briefly cover some other players who people might think should be in the conversation, and I'll just briefly cover why I don't think they deserve to be in the conversation. Brock Purdy. Listen, Brock Purdy's a great quarterback, and I think he elevates that team significantly, but I also don't think he elevates that team quite as much as some of the other guys I've mentioned in this video. I think the reason why he's not on my list is that 3-game skid where they started to lose games. I think that was inexcusable when he had a lack of talent and they lost. Patrick Mahomes. Listen, Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Let's keep that a buck. But I do think there's a little bit of voter fatigue involved in this one, and I also don't think that Kansas City Chiefs offense has been quite as good as some of these other quarterbacks I've mentioned. So I do think that knocks him down a little bit. And lastly, AJ Brown. I've heard a couple Eagles fans try to push the narrative that he should be at least in the conversation. I don't think so. I don't think he's performing quite as well as what people make it out to be. He has some nice stretches, he makes some nice plays, but sometimes he kind of is a little bit quiet some games. And I also don't think he elevates his team up to quite the level of like a Tyreek Hill, for example. So yeah, that's going to conclude my video. Hope you guys did enjoy my portion of it. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button because it helps me out a ton, as well as share this video to all your friends and family who may also enjoy NFL content. But I love you guys. Peace.